So welcome everybody who's here, and for those that haven't arrived, I'm sure you'll catch up. So we've slightly changed what we were going to do today. We were going to have an open conversation about about whether we should build a model, a maturity model competency for AI. But we've gone and built one, so we've got it anyway now. So it's going to be a little bit more looking at what we've built, but I still really need the feedback. So feel free to absolutely jump in at any point as we go through this. So some of the questions we've got in the slides are still extremely valid because when I started writing this competency 2 weeks ago, some of the things then are different to what they are now because that's how fast it's moving. Anyway, so jump straight into the slides. Let's see if I can remember how to do that. This is our standard agenda. So we're going to just give you a bit of a review of where we are, what the artifacts we are. We do this every session just to make sure that anybody who's new knows what we've already got and what this is about. We're going to do the standard grabbing of a picture. And at this point, I always wish I'd brushed my hair beforehand, and we're going to invite people to contribute or get involved in many ways, and then we'll get on to the main event, which I apologize in advance, but will be mostly me talking today, since I'm the only one of the group that really knows this this new competency inside out, since I literally finished it 2 hours ago. Just to remind you, I'll look at that, Kevin. I actually did manage to miss the URL with my head positioning, but to remind you that you can download the full schedule of these events using that link there. It might even be clickable if I've done this. It's a clickable link because we're doing it in PowerPoint Live. Just to watch out though, we've got MVP Summit coming up, and we are going to have to shift the date of one of the or the next session to accommodate that. So we'll give you a bit more of an update on that later. But this invitation series has not got that change built in. Right. So I will have to scoot out of the way. It doesn't work. Anyway, it'll work. So we'll always put the purpose up on the left-hand side. You can have a read of that. What's happened is that the set of artifacts on the right has been reorganized because we have now an exciting new cognitive business artifact, which is finished, and I dare say will be live by the end of the week when Marc has done his magic, and then Microsoft pushed it through the publication process. Fantastic. Yeah, abracadabra. So that'll be going live later this week on the Microsoft Learn site, which the link of which is around later. So that's good news. It's quite exciting to have got a new competency out in relatively short order. Right, just to remind us all, the maturity model is a 5-step process from the initial level, which is very much that sort of relatively chaotic, not very thoughtful, ad hoc. We're just trying to keep the lights on kind of approach. Then we move up the levels through managed into defined, which we really consider to be the right place for people to feel secure in terms of running a business or organization. And then we go up from there into optimizing the organization through an intermediary step of predictable. All of this stuff and more detail besides is in the maturity model overview and each individual maturity model competency on the Microsoft Learn site. Right, now this is where it gets scary. I have to try and figure out how we're going to jump out of PowerPoint sharing mode into the let's see everybody's video, grab the screenshot and then back again. So let's try that.
I don't think you need to grab the screenshots if you just go into together mode.
Let's have a look.
Got some waving going on already.
That's very good. I love the enthusiasm for that.
Prep waving.
Let's see if we can get that up.
And if it doesn't work, we'll just move on.
Now, I've only got that as a small screen thing. Does that really matter?
Well,
what if I do this?
Can you? I'm not sure.
Stop sharing your screen, Simon, and then just bring it up.
Yeah, that was what I figured. Right, let's do that. Okay, that works better. Right, now you can all wave. That'll be fantastic.
Go together mode.
Oh, I should be in together mode. Hang on, I can do that from here. Oh no, change of keyboard. I can't remember what my keyboard shortcut is.
We need to be more mature in our meetings, don't we?
Someone needs to get Simon a stream deck.
Yeah. Oh, no, I've got a brand new, exciting new keyboard, but some of my keyboard shortcuts aren't where they were. Let me try one other thing. That's embarrassing.
Well, I've got it in together mode on my side, and I'm going to take a video.
If you can do the screenshot, that'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. So I see Kevin is laughing hysterically about this. All right, I've got a screenshot, and we're good to go.
Good. Thank you for that. Okay, so let me go back into share.
Did you get us
mode.
waving, Mark, or?
Well, I may or may not have gotten you actually waving.
I think laughing hysterically, that's what we need.
That'll do nicely. Right, let me see. There's not an easy way to get straight back into the content I was just sharing. That's tedious. Right, okay, go a long way around. I'll learn this for next time. And this is why people don't use live mode as much as they probably should.
I blame more the switching of tenants. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that doesn't help. Here it comes, hopefully. PowerPoint Live, preparing my slides.
It's coming. It's coming. It's there.
And I'm back in the frame. Super. That was completely seamless and nobody noticed otherwise. Right. Okay. So just to remind you, we absolutely invite and perhaps almost demand contributions. So in this session, feel free to stick your hand up. We'll monitor that. And if you've got live questions as we're talking, please do so. Do use the chat. We're always monitoring that, and we'll try and either capture or answer the questions as we go along. If you want to actually ask the question live, come off video, come off mute, go onto video and actually ask. So that's where we are with that one. Now I appear to have lost my mouse. There it is. I'm not kidding. My mouse won't move now. This is ridiculous. Okay. I've got all sorts of trouble now.
Do you want me to push it forward for you, Simon?
Yeah, please, because I can't use my mouse anymore.
Oh,
but you're now presenting. That's weird.
Oh, cool.
Okay, look, we don't care that much. It's all fine. Right, so this is our standard overview of the purpose of these practitioner sessions. So it's a safe place. Anyone can come in and have a talk. It's a way of us getting feedback and sharing the developments around the maturity model with you, and hopefully if you've got any insights around how you're using it or what you'd like to use it for, you can do so. And there's a bunch of links there to other ways that you can get involved. The most important thing, and I'm especially going to reiterate this for this brand new competency because it hasn't been through a review process so far, is when we get it published, please use the feedback process within the Microsoft Learn, which will take you into GitHub and raise any questions, suggestions or changes in there. It's really important to us that you continue to get involved in this content. And I cannot work out.
I'm a bit forward for you.
Please. There we go. Right. So here we are in March doing the AI as it was originally built, now cognitive business. Next month, we're looking at doing a session on loop. And Marc, is it next month that we're shifting the date, or is it the month after?
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
As you can see up there at the top, it's going to be the 25th, so a week later than normal, the fourth Tuesday in April.
Fantastic. And that's because of the MVP Summit, which we're all involved in. Right. Next, please. Right, just a quick call out to those people that came along last time. And again, just to give you a couple other ways that you can get involved in this broader community rather than just in the practitioner stuff. So that slide is not quite correct now. It says April the 18th, but as Mark just said, it's the 25th next time round. And we've got the rather marvellous Darryl Webster speaking to us at that. Next. Right, and then one of the things we've started working on this year are what we're calling practical scenarios. These are sort of at the next level down from the competencies, and where we're trying to so I've just seen the picture of Kevin on the right there, that's hilarious, where we're trying to actually give more hands-on advice of how to use some of the technologies and use those to move you up to the competencies. And again, if anyone's got any views on those or would like to go and write some, that would be terrific. Next. So, what was the introduction of AI and machine learning and related technologies into the maturity model? Is our proposal is we're going to call it cognitive business for two reasons. One is that AI isn't the whole story. You know, there are a bunch of related technologies, of which true AI is only one of them. And also, as we thought about it, because the maturity models are really around business, not about the technology, this is more about how do we use thinking in business? How do we use those cognitive processes in business? And so we came up with the term cognitive business rather than AI and machine learning and other kind of stuff and the maturity model. So that's our proposal. If anyone has any better ideas than that or thinks that it's a rubbish name and wants to push back, absolutely let us know. Yeah, thanks for that, Kevin. I mean, that's a good question, but not complete. So we'll touch on that so-called generative AI in due course. But I think what we're talking about is a broader context than just the the narrow AIs around generative or other type of AI.
Yeah, we were trying to come up with something that was generically broad enough that additional things that come along would sort of slide into it, if that makes sense. You know, the AI that's the rage today or was 6 months ago is probably going to change in 5 minutes. We're now in that phase, I think.
Yeah, and also it's about having it, targeted at the business, isn't it? And sort of something which may tweak a business owner or senior management's interest in it as well. And I like the idea of the thinking business. I think that's really interesting. But then I'm very,
of course, we're open to input on that.
Yeah, of course.
Right, I've taken the opportunity to swap out for an old-fashioned wired mouse. So I've got some control again, hopefully. There we go. Right. So in this session, we were originally going to think about why cognitive business, what it is, and the role of AI and ML in the maturity model. And obviously, it's quite a broad topic and moving very quickly. We really want to think about, well, how does this AI stuff or these thinking technologies help us drive organizational success, and what are the kinds of problems that we can solve? But I'm particularly interested in the relationship, I guess, between the cognitive systems and the cognitive humans. So there's a bit of stuff that we're thinking about, but how do these things work alongside each other? And if any of you saw the announcement last week that Microsoft did around Copilot for Office and the related stuff, they had quite a nice phraseology that we were already sort of playing with, so it was kind of spooky. But they talked about having autopilot, which is where we're kind of at the moment, and then this introduction of AI that acts as a co-pilot. It works with people rather than for people or replacing people. And so we've been spending a bit of time thinking about that relationship between the technologies and the people in the model. Right. Also, we've talked about AI in the maturity model competencies previously, and typically they kick in at level 400. And we debated for some time about whether these technologies deserved a competency of their own. We've got some precedents for this. Things like governance also appear in many of the competencies, but now have a competency in their own right. So it's a question of whether it's a thin layer on top of other competencies or a deep stack. And in this case, we've taken the decision that AI, etc., becomes a deep stack as well as a thin layer. There's a bunch of different technologies and more are emerging all the time. Again, if you haven't watched the announcements from Microsoft last week, it's worth going and reading the blog and watching the YouTube video. There was a lot of stuff and some of it was unexpectedly potent and well developed. But we already are using AI in many systems. Some of them are relatively invisible AI. So a lot of your threat detection, threat prevention technologies built into Azure and Microsoft 365 are AI driven and invisible. You don't know they're there. They just get on and do the job behind the scenes. Then there are some which you have to set up, like Syntax, where you've got to do a bunch of work, train it up on your content, give it some knowledge to work on, and away it goes. And then there are those ones which are sort of very front and center, where they either have to be developed by you, it might be a configuration, or it might be a coding job, but there's a development process, and those which are directly interface with either your clients or with your staff. So we've got these different levels of AI, and we haven't really made a big attempt to segregate or classify those out. We've looked at the relationship between all of these technologies and the way that business works. Yeah, that's an interesting list. Thanks, David. So the question was going to be, should we reconsider how we think about AI within the context of the maturity model? But it's a moot point. We just have done that. So it's really important for us to observe that we're early in this adoption curve. Those of us on this call are probably going to be in the enthusiasts and visionaries. We like to claim that we're pragmatic, but sometimes our enthusiasms will get the better of us. We need to understand that lots of other people are going to be lagging on that, and we're going to be getting into the pragmatists and those that come thereafter. So we need to understand that, and that there's going to be some, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, term I'll use again, I suspect, around how AI interfaces with people and businesses. And also important to note that technology is moving so fast that some of this stuff is going to have to be rewritten or be replaced in the not distant future as more revelations come. So we ought to try and define it. So we thought we'd come up with this great new term, cognitive business, and then Simon and Marc spent a little bit of time Googling or bingifying and came up with this quite nice definition from Science Direct Topics. So cognitive businesses are those that use cognitive analytics for both operational management and strategic business decision making. And then they talk in there about the thrust on extracting information from natural language texts and combining it with structured data, which I don't think is untrue, but I don't think it's complete. I like the first part. I'm less comfortable with the second. So then we did what most people have been doing for the last 2 weeks. We asked ChatGPT. And actually, I think that this is a better definition. Interestingly, it took about 1/8 of the time to get this definition, which is a more complete one than the search process. So we're starting to do some things which fall into the maturity model hierarchy. We're starting to use the tools in a considered way in order to extract meaning and save ourselves time or make ourselves more productive. So I think it was just interesting. I'm doing this quite a lot as I get my head around how to use these tools, how I'll think of a thing, I'll figure it out myself, and I'll ask ChatGPT and I'll do a compare and contrast. Or actually, what we do is we ask Bing now, because ChatGPT 4 is built into Bing. There's lots of other AI stuff out there already, and some of those are invisible and some of those are visible. So those of us in the coding world have been looking at Copilot for GitHub for a while. I'm not a developer, but I've talked to quite a lot of developers and I haven't had a single one go, it's terrible. They've all gone, oh, I'm using that quite a bit already. I create a lot of content. Microsoft Editor, I consider myself to be top 5% when it comes to use of English language. I've learned quite a lot from the suggestions that Microsoft Editor has been making in my writing style and my grammatical use. So again, it's training me to be a better expert, which I think is quite impressive. And as we've just said, Bing is already AI powered as of, well, a couple of weeks ago, really. Just a note on that, as far as I can tell, Bing is using ChatGPT version 4.0. It is pretty much bang up to date, whereas version 3.5 only has training content up to 2021. So I think ChatGPT 4 built into Bing is state of the art, and unlike OpenAI, didn't go down last week. So that was nice. It's the same slide again. I forgot to delete the one. This is a nicer looking slide, so that's handy. I'm not going to read this stuff out, but this was from about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and this was the responses that we were getting from Bing at that time. Already some of this stuff has changed, which is kind of nice. But when I was talking to some lay people, some smart lay people, a month ago about the emergence of these chat engines, these intelligent chat engines, they were throwing up lots of criticisms about how do I know it's going to be using robust sources, and can we trust it, and all these kind of sensible questions. And by the time I started working on the competency, some of those questions had already been answered. They're starting to cite their sources. You can click through from any of the statements made through into the sources. As it runs its analysis, you can see the search terms it's using to pull that content in order for it to summarize that. So I think there's a lot of really clever stuff going on behind the scenes, which is around the governance and compliance stuff within these engines. And that's important. We talk about that quite a lot in the competency. Right, so this is like the summary version, if you like, of the brand new competency. Starting at level 100, our view is that level 100 organizations don't know that they're using AI. And it could be because they just aren't using it, which is quite impressive, but they may not be using it, or if they are using it, it's completely invisible to them. So they may be using things like Editor, and they might be using Design Engine within PowerPoint, and they might be already using the auto tagging that things like Bing and Google give them for uploaded images, but they don't know that that's an AI, and they're not that interested. Where you do try and have a conversation with level 100 organizations about AI, they push it away, or they express fear, uncertainty, doubt, dismay, all those kinds of emotional responses. Then we move up and we find some organizations starting to think about the fact that AI might be creeping into their organization one way or another. Most staff are not interested or not aware, but some people are saying, what if we used AI for this, or could AI solve that problem? There may even be some isolated instances of people experimenting with some of the AI services to see if it could add value, but there's no real coherent, there's no coherent strategy. Senior management either are uninterested or are letting it run its own course for now and not putting their arms around it. So speculation, perhaps some misconceptions leading to sort of negative responses, and any experimentation there is with AI is disconnected, but there might still be some value at that level. By the time we get to level 300, and I'd be surprised if there are many organizations at 300 yet, given how new this technology is in the scheme of things. Then at level 300, they're developing their own awareness of cognitive business. This is the business of using cognitive tools, AI and other engines, alongside their people or for their people in order to do things that they can't do very well at the moment. And that could be because the AI makes them faster, it makes them more accurate, it lets them analyze things in ways that they couldn't have done in the timescales they had. So they're starting to look at that. They're starting to explore, identify processes that might be amenable to some AI support. They're probably using primarily packaged AI, So they're using the stuff that comes as a service, maybe with a bit of configuration or a little bit of additional training, but they're not building their own much at this point. Or if they are, they're relatively simplistic chatbot type applications. Any kind of management and governance at this point is almost certainly in the hands of IT. It's not considered to be a business critical or business owned system. It's not got to that level of maturity yet. So there may be limited strategy, but it's limited. The oversight that might be required mostly isn't there, but there might be some people at least saying, have we checked that this thing has not got bias? Have we checked this thing is giving us some reasonable results? But they may not be measuring what reasonable looks like. At this point, AI is probably not treated as disruptive, whether that's internally disruptive to their existing processes or disruptive in the marketplace in which they operate. Although there may be people beginning to worry about the impact that their competitors, if they have an AI-driven business, would have on them. But that's about as far as it's gone. So this is really the autopilot mode that Microsoft have referred to, the kind of where we are now with those organizations that have done some stuff with the AI supporting some processes and some people, but not much collaboration between people and the technology. We move up to 400. Well, from a model point of view, we're seeing AIs starting to appear in other competencies as one of those efficiency and feedback mechanisms within our other competencies. And we've seen that consistently across the maturity model. At 400, you start to see three things really emerging: AIs, feedback processes, and the emergence of the organizational culture as one of the dominant activities. So we have that. At 400, we're also seeing, we would expect also see companies that have got an active strategy around AI, and that's aligned with some effective management processes. There's some interesting things that I'm going to just touch on again in a moment around HR-like review. We're getting into people understanding what the ethics and other responsible use of AI are. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that Microsoft and others have now published on what they call responsible AI. So people are starting to look at their AIs and going, does this actually meet our internal values? Does it expose us to external sort of corporate responsibility risks by the way that we're using and building AIs? Organizations at level 400 are starting to not just augment or enhance their processes, they're using AI technologies to transform their processes. That's important. And they are thinking about what is the relationship between the people and the machines. And at this point, we start to see that co-pilot vision emerging. So people and tech working alongside each other. And then level 500. I would guess that there can't be more than a handful of organizations that can even claim to have level 500 cognitive business right now, but some will be looking at it. So at level 500, we think that you've got human-machine teamwork. It's not subservient. These things work alongside each other, and the sentient part of that relationship, the people, because we're nowhere near sentient machines right now, the sentient part of that appreciates the capabilities that the AI gives them. That's different. The other thing that I really suddenly had an insight moment about a month ago was, again, there are no such things as general AIs right now, artificial general intelligences. But one of the transitions that's happened in the last 6 months is the move from very narrow, single task, basically, AIs to generalized narrow AIs. AIs that can do many, many different things. So one AI that can handle many different classes of problem. And ChatGPT is an example of that. It can write you song lyrics, it can answer complicated technical questions, it can pass exams for you, and all sorts of other things. But they're up into the hundreds of different classes of tasks that they can do. And we think that when we get to level 500, these kinds of generalized AIs will be able to do hundreds of different tasks for you within your organization. And that's not hundreds of different AIs, that is a handful of different AIs with multiple capabilities. At that point, and in the same way that I said I've learned some stuff about grammar and writing, I think the organization starts to learn from the AI, not just the other way around. And that's interesting. They use the AIs to start to change their strategy and perhaps even to develop their strategy. The business processes change as a consequence. The AIs are pretty much ubiquitous within the organization, so much so that people stop noticing that it's a thing. It's a piece of the background workplace in the same way that telephones and the internet are. And at this point, organizations have got a sophisticated approach to that responsible AI. They've got proper management stuff. They hold their AIs to account. They have ethics built in by design. That accountability thing, this is an idea that we've put into the maturity model, but I confess I actually stole from a colleague at Capgemini from a few years ago. And he suggested that AIs that replace the roles of people or fill the roles of people should be treated as if they're people. They should have line management structures. They should be put through performance reviews. They should be held to account for ethical and business principles, and they should be retrained or redeployed or removed from the workplace if they don't meet the standards that the organization has, in the same way that you would do with a person, at least analogous ways to the way you're doing with a person. And I've held on to that idea. I think it's a really powerful idea of not treating machines as machines, but treating them as people, because they're interacting with people and doing things that people would do. And if we do it right and give our AIs a good ethical base, there's the promise of, most of the time, them being better at ethics than people, because they don't get hung up on the emotional context if we can train them right. So there's a whole philosophical debate about that I might come to another day. Right, so this is just a summary of some of that. This is just the people interface. At the low levels, people do it. At the slightly lower levels, people do it, but sometimes use some specific AI. And then we move up through being routinely helped by AI to working on the same things together, to working as a team on the same things together.
So I'm going to ask Simon to take a few deep breaths.
Okay.
And open the floor for comments on this slide, because this really is the embodiment of the article that we're going to publish with a lot less detail. So thoughts, omissions, criticisms? Feel free to come off mute if you have something to say, or raise your hand, or sit there quietly enjoying what's happening.
Yeah, Anders.
Hi. So I wanted to say on the 400, 500 level, from a technical perspective, the artificial intelligence and behavioral analytic tools in IT network management work well when a tenant is properly licensed. So from an E5 perspective, they have a sort of auto remediation, auto resolution when certain alerts will come up based on email activity or SharePoint or OneDrive and sort of insider risk. So from a infrastructure platform perspective, Microsoft's been using it for those who do license it and activate it. And from a environment where we have a SOC that provides those notifications to events that happen, we have found that Microsoft tool actually responds about 10, 15, 20 minutes faster than a SOC doing that type of work and triage and putting together a story. So just want to give that as some insight.
Oh, that's a terrific point. Thank you. This idea of auto remediation and autonomous action isn't something that I've built in, and we'll add that, because I think that's a really important point. What we have got, and I think plays into some of the same space, is the ability of the AI to hand off to a human when it doesn't know what to do about something. So So
Yep.
yeah, when it's confident, it'll auto-remediate. When it's not confident, it'll ask for oversight or hand off completely.
Yeah, and that's where the tool, you approve that it can run its own automated response, and then you get the notification, and then you are responsible as a human to go in and confirm that it's a false positive or a false negative. And then you can reverse the actions that were taken, or then you go through and manage the response on your own.
Yeah, really good. And I think we're seeing that with some of those security tools right now, as you said. What we haven't seen much of so far is the suggestion that that fits in other parts of the the work process. But I would anticipate that it'll do that as well.
Just sort of that thinking about that scenario, would a level 500 sort of be? Well, I suppose actually doesn't it? It does 0-day attacks, but it generate or finds the security vulnerability, patches the codes affixed to it, patches it. Is that what level 500 might look like in that scenario where it's really the AI's fixing, resolving all the way through the process, even deploying the code through its DevOps pipelines, maybe even builds the DevOps pipelines to deploy the code. I don't know. You know what I mean? But sort of, really that's because this is the ultimate, the panacea, isn't it? It's the nirvana of AI or of a cognitive business. So
yeah, and that's the beauty of it. It runs its own run book, and then you confirm if you accept the way it was run, and then you can make it a template of actions that you want it to do again if the same thing occurs. So, and so as an AI perspective, it's much faster than a human can come up with a full story on a full attack and where it touched. It's so much faster, and then the humans can sit down and look at it and figure out what effects it had in their network and if it was appropriate or not. And then you train the AI to change its process based on how you want it to manage that response next time.
Interesting. Cool, thank you.
Sorry, and just to add, like on the human user perspective, the easiest way for humans and your users to participate is from like an Outlook perspective where they can report something as spam, and that is teaching AI what they consider spam, what they don't consider spam, and then that helps your artificial intelligent agent in your network as well. So,
yeah. Thank you. I don't know who was first, Kevin or Simon.
Kevin was.
Thank you. I was just checking that. Yeah, I was just. I know we had some chat about the kind of level 100 and the no AI there, and kind of my view that I don't think anyone has no AI, even if they're not knowingly using it on there. But it kind of linked to something we've been talking about internally in terms of positioning people for using AI. So even if they're not exploring tools and making of it, I think we saw with things like Delve, and this kind of goes out almost to the information architecture, which probably classifies into other things, but positioning your content in a way to be able to use AI, making sure you're not surfaces problems that you have in there that kind of fits with that strategy for AI and your almost your policies around it. Yeah. And the reason I'm kind of mentioning that is I kind of feel that needs to come a bit higher up. Planning what you're going to do about it should be further focused, and then linking with those implementations as the further maturity of actually doing things with it.
Yeah.
And I also feel that with the 500 we have, it's kind of not leaving so much growth for what interesting new things come out that we haven't thought about as well. It almost feels there's a next level that might not even. I suppose you kind of touched on this being there, but it feels like the jump between 400 and 500 is too big at the moment.
Well, wouldn't each sort of new class of AI, each new capability that comes out sort of go through the same maturity ladder in a sense? I mean, if you think about, how did people react to Delve in the beginning? Well, this graph stuff, it scared everybody. People tried to avoid it. Yeah, they can see my stuff. And And so, the maturity level of what we see as the graph now, as I think as a general user base, we've gone up that ladder. And then something else comes along and we sort of start at the bottom again. And then, so it's almost, I think an organization, just like with the different competencies, an organization might be, very mature with a certain kind of AI and have not touched something else. For example, if you think it's hard, I think part of what you're bringing up is, where do you draw the line? What's AI and what's machine learning? And, was Microsoft Graph AI-ish? Sure felt like it, didn't it? So,
I mean, it was making recommendation based on things you did without you being able to kind of directly influence that. And also think within this, we don't cover so much if we go back to that delve, it's the just turn it off and stop it happening. I mean, maybe that comes back to what the no AI is, and maybe it's beyond that. It's blocking AI.
More of an avoidance than a recognition.
We're scared, so let's turn it off.
Yeah. We always think of the 100 as being, it's like the default state, isn't it? And we talk about that, like if you think about management of content, it's like, this is what you get when you first switch on Microsoft 365. So, but
if that's the case,
then it has some AI, doesn't it? It's just there's not an awareness.
It's not knowing. Almost the 200 is, we know it's there. Quick, let's turn it off and stop people doing things with it.
Yeah. I think that's right. Yeah. I think that is right. And or 200 that way, or we start to play around and try some of these things. Try Cortana, or try the insights, Viva Insights, that kind of thing. So and the new Bing, And
I think it's that risk that comes back to that security of people using these things in ways that they shouldn't, of exposing potentially internal and customer data out to people without realizing it.
Yeah.
Simon, you had a thought you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, that's what Kevin there was talking about the sort of the risk and the people side of things, and we do perhaps want to take a bit of a sort of techno-utopianism type approach here, but the fact is that people will be getting hold of these tools, they'll be using them, mistakes will be made, and they'll be compounded, and there'll be all kinds of issues around that. And it's not just the technical literacy, but it's also the human literacy, the ability to do stuff with it and to do it effectively, and how those kind of conversations are being held within organizations. So I'm not entirely sure whether there's a question or a point, but
I think it's a really good point, and something we've tried to touch on in the competency is talk about understanding the capabilities and constraints of the AIs, the compliance and other issues, but also this thing about having sort of audits and input-output validation and a whole bunch of other sort of feedback routes to make sure the AI is doing what you intended, not unintended things, which is kind of exactly the same as you have with people again. We need to monitor people, so we should be monitoring the AIs. The AIs just can make bigger mistakes more rapidly with more flair.
Are people talking about AI auditors? I mean, people who are on systems who are auditing what the AI is doing.
I don't know if people are talking about it, but we certainly are. I don't know if that means that we're not
they
people.
are.
Okay.
I'll try and dig out the tweet. There was a thing yesterday. One of the first things when GPT-4 was announced was they have a set of tests to see if it can become sentient and break out the barriers, which was kind of fascinating. I'll see if I can dig the link to that, because it's really interesting.
That wasn't the level of auditing I was thinking of, but nonetheless, I would love to see it.
One of the other things which I think is going to be an emergent challenge is, if we're going to try and set sets of standards and values and ethics for these AIs, how the heck do we codify those? Ethics, I'm not aware of any robust language for defining ethical positions, and yet we're going to need a codified ethics communication tool to be able to robustly set AIs to do what we want them to do. We're not there yet. Right now, they're very much supervised by people, but there will come a time when we need to be able to set and measure their ethics against an actual observable standard.
It might be we interview them. We might interview them and say, we've defined these types of behaviors. Here's a good behavior. Here's a okay behavior. Here's a bad behavior, and interview them and see which one they come up with. And if they say the bad behavior, well, that's not, that AI is not right. It might be that's how it sort of comes about. Sorry.
I don't want to hog things too much, but just in the circumstances that Microsoft actually, there is something fundamentally wrong with the way that their AI is going to work, that it starts leading to some business downturns or failures and those kinds of things within, and that there are so many companies with their eggs in a single basket. What on earth could we do? What's the kind of conversation we can have around making sure that people are able to make sure that they are making the best decisions for their organization?
Yeah.
So that is also something which I was fretting over a bit over the last couple of days, is where if you've got organizations that have allowed the AIs to be the dominant voice at the board table, then how do they, what's to stop the AI starting to game against each other and the whole system imploding? And I have no good answer to that, to be honest. I mean, we've seen some of this stuff potentially happening in global finance markets. AIs are already used to do stocks and shares trading, all that kind of stuff. And so far, I don't think there's been any disasters, but it is something we need to make sure that we guard against, so that we don't get one of these sort of runaway loops that results in, over the course of months or years, but that results in the whole edifice coming tumbling down. But this is a much broader AI philosophical question, for which it's probably above my pay grade, but we have talked a lot in the model, at least, about having appropriate oversight, controls, audits, those kind of things. And the more embedded these tools become, the more critical it is you have those checks and balances.
It's great fodder though for this is all great fodder for the competency. That's this is things which really should be level 300. Shouldn't they? Thinking about maybe not the protecting from global demise, but just to have having audits, having those checks and balances. Yeah.
I mean, at the risk of me going off on one of my pet subjects, I think one of the things that will emerge from this as we try and nail down what we want how our AIs are meant to behave, is it will make us think about that ourselves inside our organizations and really try and nail down what we think is and isn't acceptable. And I don't think a lot of organizations do that as robustly as they could, but you can imagine a situation where different companies have AIs with a different ethical base. I would say that Apple and Microsoft will have different values, and therefore their AIs will behave differently. And we'll then see it again at a national level. The US will behave differently to the UK or to China. And so there's all these things which are going to coming out of the woodwork, that AIs will be a tool for us to observe as well as being a tool that responds to those different differences. Anyway, yes, Aaron.
Hi there. Yeah, just two things. One, I love what you guys are talking about, because we've been conflicted with that almost kind of interesting dichotomy that Microsoft and other large companies are putting out these powerful AI abilities or cognitive abilities, but then it's incumbent in the user on how to manage them appropriately. And if we are in the lower levels, that's a very difficult thing to put on their shoulders, since they don't have that framework in the beginning to even understand how these are really working. And so I love hearing that you guys are reaching out to provide guidance and saying that you should have auditable, explainable, and ethical AI, but going a step further into what that really means. And I know you mentioned earlier it's hard to codify that or codify that, but we need to start somewhere with that, because I think that may be a lot of people's struggles breaking from the 100 to 300 range into 400 and 500, is having that leg up, because it will be very foreign and poorly understood. I think that also coupled with extreme transparency around data privacy and data usage, that's especially in regulated industries, that's going to be a huge prohibitive boundary. If we don't know where the data is being sent for retraining. We definitely want to make your models better and those experiences better, but the ownership of that data may be restricted from other contractual needs. And so the ease of that transparency to that data usage is going to be huge for adoption, especially in regulated spaces.
Yeah.
And so very curious to see that continue to grow. Because I agree, this is kind of new, and we're letting these awesome technologies out there without a lot of, boundaries, other than just, well, make sure you guys are using them responsibly. But I think we really do need to band together and rapidly produce prototypes of that codification, of that usage, and start iterating on that, because we're going to be experimenting with the tool. We should be rapidly experimenting with that regulation as well.
Yeah, we've touched on that. Perhaps it needs more exploration, but we've touched on the need to do that within the model without going into the details of how we do it. And I think there's definitely some work we should all apply ourselves to think about how can we set those standards and do that testing. So I'm really making myself notes about some of this stuff now. But yeah, I need an "Are you evil" test. So if anyone's got a handy "Are you evil" test, that would be useful. Or "How evil are you" might be the appropriate thing.
Well, and there are things that are evil, and there are things that are perceived as evil too. So, do the people in an organization feel comfortable with what's happening around them in that organization is on that spectrum, right? Hey, you just go back to the Delve thing. Hey, you're showing my stuff. I don't like that. That felt evil to a lot of people.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, how technology makes us reevaluate ourselves, not just the tech.
Well, and especially something trained on us, it truly is a reflection of how we have been establishing ourselves as the training set for these AIs. So what a better mirror to look into than how these AIs are behaving.
Yeah, exactly, Aaron. I talk about it a lot. Let's not forget who the benchmark is here. When we say, "Oh, the AI made a mistake," it's like, yeah, but did it make more mistakes than the equivalent person? And whether that's an ethical mistake or a pragmatic one.
It's like blaming the code you wrote for the errors that it throws. And I've worked with people who've done that. It's very strange. Simon, we have about 3 more minutes, I think.
Yeah.
You want to hit on anything else?
Okay, I think we'll skip the rest of this slide. I guess to round it out, we have our usual set of links and thank yous. So I'll leave that up on screen. Again, said it several times. We're going to get this model published very rapidly, and then we really would like people to go and poke it with a pointy stick and tell us where we've got things wrong, or we've missed stuff, or you think that we ought to go deeper, because this stuff's hard. We tried to reach out to get an AI expert to come and run this session, and Microsoft hasn't really got any, not in the way that we can reach out and get our arms around them. You try and find an MVP who is an expert in this stuff right now, and there aren't really any. So we're all forging new ground at the moment. So we need you guys to help us improve what we've got. Treat yourself as the training set.
And I've been working on the article to get it out there as fast as I can during this call. That's what I've been doing. That's why I haven't been paying as much attention. So I wanted to make sure we get this rolling. So expect it to be out there in the next day or 2.
Fantastic.
Probably worth mentioning, our next call will be 1 week later than usual. It's highlighted on this slide, April 25th instead of April 18th. I'm not sure if David got the invitation updated, but I think he has. So just make sure that if you've got it on your calendar that you adjust it if it hasn't been.
Yeah. Good. And as always, you've got multiple ways of getting in touch with us. Obviously, you can directly interact with documents, but tweet either to us or about us. Emails, all those kind of things are all available. Email, I remember that. You can get us on Teams. Actually, most of us are live federated, so federatable. So reach out.
Thanks for joining us. Good conversation.
Yeah,
both
thanks
in
for
the
the
chat
conversation,
and
guys.
verbally.
Very good.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
See you next time.
See you next month. Bye bye.
Cheers all.
Take care.